The Civil War Letters of Albert Clark Morse, Sergeant, Company F, 7th Wisconsin Veteran Volunteers, Grand Army of the Republic. Albert Clark Morse, born October 14th, 1842, was a lad of 18 cutting hay in a family apple orchard near Tafton, now called Bloomington, Wisconsin, when a neighbor came by in his buggy and asked him if he would ride with him to Lancaster to enlist in a unit being formed there. Evidently, the idea of becoming a soldier won over scything hay under the hot August sun. He was mustered in on August 19th, 1861, along with many other young men, to help fill the ranks of Company F, 7th Wisconsin Volunteers. They joined a contingent at Camp Randall in Madison, Wisconsin, and after the end of the Civil War, having served for nearly 4 years, he was mustered out as sergeant near Jefferson, Indiana, on July 13th, 1865. The following are copies and transcripts of his extant letters home during that period. He wrote to his mother, Martha Morse, and his older brother, Ed, and his sisters, Mattie, Eunice, and Emma. There are also 3 letters he wrote to his brother-in-law, John Brackett. October 22nd, 1861, Camp Arlington. Dear Mother, I received your letter last Saturday night and was very glad to hear from you, as I had been expecting a letter from you for a long time, and I have been a little disappointed to think that you did not write before. But I suppose that you could not get time, or if you did, you were just too tired to write. If you can, I want you to answer this one a little quicker. I am in good health at the present, and I hope that this finds you the same, only for a longer time. We are still encamped at Arlington Heights, about 4 miles from Washington and in Timbered County. It seems strange that a place as this, and so near the capital, that it should not be more cultivated. The land here is all covered with timber, with only now and then a small place occupied by any owner. The timber is a very good size, about like that beside of G.M. Smith's land, and it is said that it once all covered with tobacco plants and made into tobacco plantations. The owners have moved off to the west, and to make new ones instead of making the old ones good that they have worn out. The boys all feel very well and are in good health and have plenty to eat and first-rate beds to sleep on. Maybe you'd like to know what they're made of. They're made of round poles laid as close together as possible, and that's so we cannot slip through between them. And another thing maybe you would like to know is how I can sleep on such things. Well, I can sleep on them as well as on a feather bed. Well, this is about all I think of this time. I want you to have Ed write what calves are worth, and whether there is any chance of getting any, and also whether there he can keep them for me and if I should get some. Tell him to write just as soon as you get this. Mother, have you got any money from the state yet? You're entitled to $5 a month, which would amount to 10 by the 19th. You can get Uncle Warren to get it for you. Write about it when you write. Goodbye. Yours affectionately, Albert C. Morse. P.S. Tell Ed to write soon. November 3rd, 1861, Camp Arlington. Dear Sister Eunice, I suppose I must write you a letter, as I received one from you a few days since, and I suppose I should answer it. There is one thing queer about it, is how you should dare to write to me without my first writing to you, as to be like other folks. Well, betwixt you and I do not suppose there is any other one in Tafton that would even think that it was right to write to me without my first writing to them for you well. Now, for instance, as Uncle Nye says in almost all my letters, they say that such and such a one wants me to write to them. Well, I do, as fast as I can, but they don't think that I would do to write to me first, but you, Eunice Brackett, broke over the bounds, and I'm mighty glad of it. We are all well and having first-rate times. We've been digging up the ground to build winter accommodation quarters on. Or at least I suppose that to be the case. We are to move our tents over there tomorrow. It's been a rather pleasant fall here as a general thing, or that is to within a few days, and since then we've had rather heavy rains till last night when it stopped. And now it's clearing up, I hope, as stay, as it's not very pleasant to sleep in the mud. We have general inspection every Sunday and a review about once every week. Last Thursday was muster roll. That's the day when we're all mustered in to see who's entitled to receive pay. We'll probably get our pay the last of this week, and for my part, I hope so. It's not very cold here yet, as we have only had frost enough to kill the leaves on the trees. I don't think of any more at this time. Tell John that I'll write to him as soon as I can. Tell Lily that Uncle Al is all right. Goodbye. Yours in haste, Albert C. Morse, and excuse all mistakes. Write soon. November 17th, 1861. Camp Arlington. Dear Sister Mattie, I received a letter from you a few days ago, and also one from Eunice. I was very glad to hear from you. Only next time I want you to write me a longer letter than you did then, won't you? For if you don't, I shall consider that it takes two of them to make one. Wouldn't that be right? I imagine you say yes, but I expect I can tell better when I'm here from you. Well, Matt, they are first-rate letters, and do me good to read them only. I wish they would come thicker and faster and more of them. I tell you a letter does one good. It is as good as meal of victuals, and that's saying considerable. Well, enough of this. We are within a mile of Arlington House, and it's the house that General Washington married in, and the piano is there that his wife played on. I've never been in the house yet, but the boys have. They say splendid paintings of the great battles that were fought in the Revolution. It's a splendid house. It was built 114 years ago. Let me see, that would make it 1757, wouldn't it? Yes. Near there is a burying ground. It is a very beautiful sight. It contains the graves of George W. P. Custis and Martha W. Custis. They were relations of George Washington. Mother can tell you about them, I guess. The graves have splendid monuments over them, and it has every appearance of being a splendid place around there before the war. But like all other places around here, it's been run over by the army. That and all other land around is owned by an officer in the rebel army, and that's General Lee. Lorin Parsons went into Alexandria today. He saw the house that Colonel Ellsworth was killed in, and he got a piece of the lounge he was laid on after he was shot. He brought home a piece of it. I haven't been around any yet, but I shall see if I can get a pass before long. The boys are all well. Maybe you'd like to know what they're doing. Well, most of them are just writing letters, and the rest are a-reading. I can't think of anything more at this time. Write as soon as you get this. Yours in haste, Albert C. Morse. December 13th, 1861. Camp Arlington. Dear Sister Mattie, yours of the first instruction was received some time ago, and I have neglected to answer it because I thought I might have more to write about. I got a letter from Mother that same night that I got one from you, and answered it last Sunday, but I did not write it very plainly as I was in a great hurry. You may tell Mother that the next time I'll try and write plainer. You said that you could not answer my letters because you had no stamps. Well, after this I will send you a stamp in each letter, said you may not be troubled on that account. I'm glad that you've gotten along so well in your studies. You wanted to make out an example for you to work out. Well, I will trust you to your word for it this time, and not make up one till you get a little farther along, and, well, I don't know as I will at all, because I've been out of practice a long time. You might get ahead of me. I expect you'll be a splendid scholar when I get home, or at least I hope so. Learn all you can. The boys are all well and in good spirits. I was over to the second the other night and had a very pleasant visit. Philo, we were wondering what the people were doing in Tafton. It was a very pleasant evening. The moon shone as bright as I ever saw it, and it was as warm as it is in Wisconsin in Tater Harvest. That's about as near as I can come of it. In my letter to Mother, I told her that we were going out on pickets. Well, we went last Tuesday morning. We had to march 9 miles to get out of the posts, the place where we were to stand. I was one of the advance guard, which consisted of 20 soldiers, who went about a half a mile ahead of the rest of the regiment. We were there 2 days and come back yesterday, and we relieved the 6th Regiment, and the 2nd Wisconsin relieved us. Nothing happened of any account while we were there, except 2 black women came in the first night we were there. They came in from Fairfax and got to our pickets about 12 o'clock at night. They appeared to think themselves perfectly safe as soon as they got to our pickets. They said the reason they came was because the rebels were going to move them to Manassas and would take them along. They stayed in camp till the afternoon of the next day, when the colonel gave them a pass and they went toward Washington. You may tell Maddie W. that I got a letter from her the last night, and will answer it as soon as I can. We are going to have an inspection tomorrow by General McClellan's staff, and I expect it will keep us busy to get our morning to clean our guns and get ready for it. I wouldn't wonder if we should get our rifles before long. I hope so. We've been having a good time this evening, dancing and reading, but I've been reading most of the time. Tell Annette that I am much obliged to her for writing to me, and excuse this blot, and will answer when I write to Maddie. Give my love to all, and accept a little to yourself. Excuse mistakes. Yours in haste, Albert C. Morse. March 9th, 1862. Camp Arlington. Dear Mother, as I have nothing else to do, I suppose that I ought to write you a letter, but I can't say that I feel much like it. I'm not very well, nor have I been for a long time. Or I should have said about 2 weeks, but that seems a long time to me. I'm now in the hospital and am doing very well. I think that I shall go back to my company in a few days. Cousin Philo wrote me a letter a few days ago, for which I was very much obliged. In the letter Amos last wrote, he said your health was very poor. I was sorry to hear it, and I hope that it is better by this time. I don't want you to worry about me at all, as I am all right, or soon will be. I'm a-doing fine now. There's not much news to write. The boys are all well. Nothing more this time. Goodbye. Albert C. Morse. June 3rd, 1862. Fairfax Seminary Hospital. Dear Mother, I received the letter last Sunday, with also one from Maddie. I was very glad to hear from you, as it took me rather by surprise, for I had concluded that you were not going to write to me any more, but I was happily disappointed. I am well, but I'm not strong, or I should join the regiment I'm to work with in the dining room of the hospital. My work is waiting on the table. It's not very hard work, but rather busy. I did make the tea and coffee, but it was more than I could stand, so I went to the dining room. I haven't been very sick since I have been to this hospital. Before I came here, I had the quinsy and a fever for a short time. My lungs are not very good, but are better than they have been. But I don't know that they will ever be, so that I can carry a knapsack. I feel first rate now, and I'm a-devlin with the boys all the time. Now, Mother, I don't want you to worry about me, because it won't help you, nor any if you do, and another thing, I don't expect to be sick any more before the war's over, and I expect I'll be before the 1st of October next. I'm glad that you've got money from the state, and hope that you'll get more. It's very warm weather here now. Strawberries are ripe. I haven't got a hold of any of them yet, but if I do, I tell you I will make them suffer. It's a very pleasant place here, and it was formerly, in all probability, one of the nicest places in the state. It's the prettiest place for a school that I ever saw. From here, you can see Washington and Alexandria And we also have a good view of the Potomac, and I can see vessels pacing down all the time. There's going to be a great deal of fruit here this summer. The peach trees hang full of peaches, and soon there will be ripe cherries. I'm sorry that Ed had had such bad luck, and hope that you'll have better sometime. If he don't, if I was him, I would hang up the fiddle. Now, Mother, I don't want you to wait so long next time before you write. I want you to write often. Goodbye. Albert C. Morse. August 16th, 1862. Fairfax Seminary Hospital. Dear Brother Edward, I received a letter from you today and was very glad to hear from you, also that the folks are all well. You appear to be concerned about my health, and, well, Ed, that is useless. I am quite well at present and have not been seriously sick since April. There has been a spell for a while back that I did not feel very well, but it didn't amount to much. You may think it strange that I did not join my regiment, and the reason is because I don't think I can stand it. I am not near tough as I once was. If I was you, you would not catch me to stay here. You would want me to get a discharge. Well, that is something I don't want as long as I can stand it in Dixie. The work that I am doing is not hard, and I get good pay for doing it. That is, $20.50 per month. And I think that it is better that I should do at home, but another thing, Uncle Samuel furnishes a plenty of places to spend it. I know that I could lay up more money at $12 per month than I can carry in the army at $20, and my clothes furnished besides. Ed, I am at work, and now in the dining room of Fairfax Seminary Hospital. The work is light, and considering everything, I think that it is the best I can do. Ed, I wrote you a letter a few days ago, and in it I sent you $20. I want you to let me know right off whether you get it or not. I've had very good times here lately, eating fruit, which principally consists of ripe peaches, pears, or apples. There's been an abundance of them, and they might do good too, I tell you. It's generally pretty healthy here at the present time. There was quite a sad accident happened on the Potomac a few days or nights ago, I should have said. The Peabody ran into the West Point and sunk it. It was loaded with soldiers of Burnside's division. There were 83 that lost their lives. The rest of them, about 100 in number, came back here, and I tell you, they were a sorry-looking set. There being quite a number that had lost most all their clothes. There was quite a number of wounded here that were in the last fight at Culpeper Courthouse. From what I can learn, I don't think that the 7th Wisconsin Regiment was in the fight, nor any of the Brigade. I haven't heard from the regiment in a long time, but the last time I did, it was that the Tafton boys were all well. Ed, you must not enlist if you can possibly get rid of it. Your place is at home, and at home you must stay. Why, if you all come here, there won't be enough left to take care of the rebels at home. It won't do for all the men to leave. I haven't room to write any more. Please excuse mistakes. I want you to answer this right off. From your brother, Albert C. Morse. P.S. I've always answered all of the letters that I've received from you, which I must say were rather few. Please be sure to write, and I'll let me know whether you got that money or not. Albert Clark Morse. September 10th, 1861. General Hospital, Fairfax Seminary. Dear Brother Edward, your letter was received about a week ago, and I can tell you that it was a very welcome one to me, as it's not often that I get a letter from home or hear from the folks about them. I want you to write often and send some of the folks, as I do not correspond with many of those parts now. If you can't make up a letter alone, let the rest heave a hand, as the sailors say, and help you. I got a letter from Cassius a few days ago, and shall answer if as soon as anything tunes up, well, and probably before. There is a great many sick and wounded here at the present time. I think about 1,200. There has, within the past 3 days, about 400 wounded came to this hospital, and of the worst cases, some with their arms off. some with one leg off and some with both, besides numerous other wounds. I tell you, it's enough to make one sick of war. To see them, and what makes it worse, some of them lay on the battlefield for 5 to 7 days without their wounds dressed, or anything to eat, and only water to live upon. Oh, I tell you, it looked awful to see them. Almost all of them had their wounds fly blown. They were brought in under flag of truce, and were brought from the late Bull Run battlefield. Some of the poor fellows died before they got here. I think there were about 10 taken off the ambulances dead. According to the morning newspaper, Jackson was in Maryland with 150,000 men and 200 pieces of artillery, but I cannot think that he'd take Washington or Baltimore. He may make a raid into Pennsylvania, but we will meet him with a warm reception if he tries it. I don't think that his going into Maryland will lengthen the war, but shorten it, as I think that it will be likely to call out the Union forces more quickly from the north. It's getting so dark that I can't see to write, and I don't believe you can read what I've written. Please excuse mistakes, and expect this from your brother, A.C. Morse. Fairfax Seminary Hospital, October 17th, 1862. Dear Sister Mattie, I received your letter of the second instruction a little over 1 week ago, and was very glad to hear from you and the rest of our folks. I wrote you a letter on your birthday, which probably you would have received before this time. I wrote to Ed and Cash quite a while ago, and have received no answer from either of them, and have come to the conclusion that they are not going to write to me any more. Well, then can do just as they please, which I believe is a privilege that everyone in this country is allowed, unless it is a soldier. But I'm pretty sure one thing, and that is that I shan't write to them until they do to me. I would like to hear from home once in a while, and I do not know how I am unless some of them that write to me once in a while to let me hear what's going on. Mattie, when you write to me again, I want you to let me know how and where Uncle Wilson's folks are, and how Uncle Warren is and what he is about, and also his folks. The reason that I ask these questions are that I have not heard from any of them in a long time. Now, another question. Has Amos Wilson enlisted? I want Ed to write and tell me what he's been doing all this summer, and how his crops are. That is, if he concludes to write. I was at Alexandria about 1 week ago, and saw Cousin Philo. He's in Alexandria Street Hospital, and had got about well when I saw him, and he says that he shall go to his regiment in a week or two. I had a real pleasant visit with him, and it seemed almost like home to see him once more. Mattie, you ought to write to him again once in a while, whether he does to you or not. It's quite warm here now, and I suppose it's quite cool where you are. There's been no frost here yet. Mattie, you saw a couple of darkies at the fair, didn't you? And thought they looked quite gentlemanly, did you? Well, you and I differ there. I never saw a darky that I thought looked that way yet, and I've seen quite a number of them. I can assure you, but everyone has a right to their own opinion. I'm sorry to hear that Cassius is sick, and hope that he may be better ere this. I haven't heard from Amos in a long time. If you have, please inform me of his whereabouts. I haven't room to write any more this time. Please excuse mistakes, and write soon. Give my love to all the folks, and also yourself. Goodbye. Albert C. Morse. Tell Eunice that I'll write to her as soon as I've found anything to write about. Fairfax Seminary Hospital, November 2nd, 1862. Dear Edward, I received your letter yesterday with also one from Mattie, and I tell you I was most mighty glad to hear from you, and to hear that you are doing so well. Why, Ed, I will be damned if you haven't done first rate this summer, and considering everything better that I should have thought you could have done. Why, you done bully, and now the thing is to keep on doing so, and you'll come out all right. What is wheat worth now, and other grains? The reason I ask these questions is because I have no chance to find out here, and I want to know what chance you have to sell your grain, and see if you will make anything out of it. I was very glad to hear that you had raised some sorghum, as I understand sugar is very high since this war broke out. I suppose your only difficulty will be to get it worked up, and that won't be as much as Matt says that Uncle Warren has got a mill for that business. I should think that you might do first rate on hogs, as that's about all soldiers live on. Ed, if you can, I hope that you will pay Reed up, and if I can help you, I will. I want when you answer this letter to tell me when you will want the money if I send you any. Now, put it off as long as possible so that I can send you more. I think I can send you $40 by the first of the month, and that'll help a little, won't it? Now you must not depend entirely on that, for I may possibly disappoint you when I am not certain when I will get my pay. About your killing that calf of mine, I don't care so long as you give me a good one in its place. What kind of a team have you got to do your work with? Have you done any plowing this fall? What is Cash about? I want him to write to me. My health is very good. I weigh 147 pounds, which is the heaviest that I ever was. I got a letter from Amos about 1 week ago. He was then in the commissary for the hospital at Springfield, which, by the way, is a first-rate position. And if he could only keep that, he need not ask for a better one. I got a paper from John yesterday that had a list of the killed and wounded at Captain Palmer's company. Tell John that I'm very much obliged for him. I saw Tom Buttersworth today. He is quite well. He was wounded in the Battle of Gainesville, just before the Battle of Bull Run. I saw Luke Parsons a few days ago. He's in the convalescent camp near Alexandria, and when I saw him he was very well, but said that he had a toothache pretty bad once in a while. Well, Ed, what do you think of the war and the President's proclamation anyway? Nothing more this time. Write soon yours in haste. Albert C. Morse. Camp near Belle Plaine, 7th Wisconsin, January 24th, 1863. Dear Brother Edward, I once more seat myself on the sacred soil of Virginia to write a few lines to you. I received a letter from you about 1 week ago, and was very glad to hear from you and the rest of our folks, and to hear that you are all well. Since I got your letter, I've been on quite a long march, which I am sorry to say did not amount to any good to our arms, but I'm afraid some hurt, as there have been many great desertions since the army took up the line of march, which was last Tuesday. We marched 2 days from here to about 4 miles above Falmouth on the Rappahannock River, and I suppose with the intention of crossing and flanking the rebels, and driving them out of their breastworks at Fredericksburg, which I think we could have done had the weather proved favorable. The day we started it began to thaw and rain, and made the roads impossible for army trains or artillery, which are indispensable to an army on the move. On the morning of the 3rd day, the order came that we were to go back to our old quarters near Belle Plaine, and I tell you, most of the boys were glad of it. But if the weather had held good, most of our soldiers would have been willing to have crossed and done what they could towards driving the rebels from behind their breastworks. But Ed, in this last move, there was more straggling than I ever want to see again, and I guess more than there had ever been before in the Army of the Potomac. But I guess there was always a plenty of it, particularly among the Eastern troops. But if I do say so, not among the Western troops. Yesterday was the hardest march for me that I ever had. I don't suppose it would have been so hard if it had not been so muddy. I threw away one of my blankets, or it could have not kept up at all. January 25th, 1863. I did not finish this letter yesterday, so I have concluded that I had better try and finish it now. I shall send you some money when I get paid off, but I don't know when that will be. I hope before long, as I have not been paid for 6 months. The paymaster is expected here to pay us off some time this month. If he comes, you may expect some money about the 1st of next month. Cousin Philo came back to his company just in time to march to Falmouth and back. He looks first-rate, and his leg stands it pretty well. Billy Crosby has been quite unwell, but is better now. I got a letter from Cash this morning, and shall answer it as soon as possible. I haven't heard from Amos in a long time, so long that I don't know where to write a direct letter to him. Well, Ed, do you like Burnside any better than you did McClellan? There has never been a general thought so much of by his soldiers as George B. McClellan was by his, and I believe that McClellan can do more today with the Army of the Potomac than any other man. Well, I haven't room to write any more, so goodbye. Yours in haste, Albert. Camp near Belle Plaine, February 23rd, 1863. Dear Sister Mattie, I received a letter from you on last Saturday, with also one from Mattie Wilson, and I was very glad to hear from you and to hear that you and the rest of the folks were well. I should like very much to have Mother write me a letter, and to have her send me her picture if she can get it taken. I'm very glad to hear that the little folks are doing so well, and some of them pretend to remember me. I should like very well to see them once more, for I think it would seem as if I was in a civilized country again. But I suppose that I will have the chance to see them when the war is over. I suppose that I must wait patiently until that great day shall come, but when it shall come no man can tell, not even the Abraham of modern time, much less the one of old. I got a letter from Amos this morning, the first that I've gotten since last November. He is well and with his regiment, and said that he likes it better than he did when he was with the regiment before. He also says that he'd been in a fight, and that he got a chance to fire 36 rounds of cartridge at the rebels, which is pretty good for him, I believe. My health has been very good this winter, and I'm the heaviest that I ever was at 156 pounds at present, and don't suppose it'll be long before I weigh 160. We'll have plenty to eat, and Matt, that is good enough. I like it better than I did last winter. We have now potatoes twice a week, fresh beef about half the time, and all the pork we want, besides plenty of beans and more rice and coffee than we can use. Sugar, as a matter of course, we'd find plenty of uses for, but we have a plenty to sweeten our coffee and some to eat on our bread. Molasses we only draw once in a while, but we don't miss that much. We have soft bread now instead of hardtack, as they're usually called, but better known amongst civilized communities as hard crackers, resembling a white oak chip more than anything else. I've seen some of them so hard and so old that they were marked BC, and for my part I don't think that they were dated back any so far. I saw a sight the other day that was the drumming out of the service of several privates belonging to the Brigade, but none of this regiment. But some of them were of the splendid 2nd Wisconsin. They had their heads shaved and their buttons torn off their coats and were drummed out in the presence of the Brigade. It was a disgraceful sight, and for my part it seems as if I would soon be shot as to go home that way. I haven't room to write any more this time. Give my love to Mother and all the rest of the folks. Goodbye. Camp near Belle Plaine, March 21st, 1863. Dear Mother, as I have not heard from home for some time, I concluded that I would write a few lines to you to find out what folks are about up in that neighborhood. I want to know what kind of a visit you had in Illinois. Also, how the folks all are down. Tell me who has enlisted of Uncle's boys. My health is very good, I think, as good as it has been since I've been in the service. I've been living pretty high lately, as the boys that I tent with have just got a box of provisions from home, and as a matter of course, I had to share it with them. The names of the boys I tent with are as follows: Griffin Hickok, Lorenzo Taylor, Joe Stonehouse, and Webb Cook. Night before I had the best supper I've had since I've been in the army. It consisted of ham and eggs, pie, cake, cheese, sausage, bread and butter, and coffee. Don't you think that's pretty good for a soldier? We've had very changeable weather here. Lately, yesterday, it snowed all day, and today it's raining quite hard, and probably tomorrow will be as nice and warm as one could wish to see. The roads are very bad yet. I don't think that the army will move here before the 10th of next month. Mother, I want you to ask Ed to send me a few postage stamps, about 50 cents in money, to get some paper and envelopes with you, as I've not had any pay for 8 months, and I don't know when I shall get any more. I got a Grant County Herald last night, and was quite glad, as I have not seen one for a long time. Cousin Philo had just called in, and he wants me to go over to his tent and play with him a game of chess, and I guess I shall go. Colonel Callis got back last night. I don't think of any more at this time. Goodbye, Albert. Camp near Belle Plaine, April 14th, 1863. Dear Mother, I received your letter last week, and I was real glad to hear from you. I haven't time to write much, as we have marching orders and shall have to prepare for it. My health is very good and hope that yours is. We have orders to march, but when, I do not know. But probably tonight or tomorrow morning, as we shall have to take 3 days' cooked rations with us, and leave what are not cooked. And probably before you get this, there will have been a great battle fought by the Army of the Potomac and the Confederate forces at Fredericksburg, but with what success remains to be seen. You must not worry about me, as I will write often as is convenient. I haven't time to write any more. Goodbye, and give my love to all the folks, and accept some for yourself from your son, Albert C. Morse. P.S. Write soon. Camp near White Oak Church, June 5th, 1863. Dear Brother Ed, I think I may as well write a few lines to you this evening, as I don't know when I shall get another chance. We have just got orders to march tomorrow morning at 4 o'clock, and I suppose across the river, as there has been some cross today and have been fighting this afternoon. I understand that we've gotten about 500 prisoners. They crossed 2 miles below Fredericksburg, near where Burnside crossed last fall. It's been generally believed here for some days past that the rebels were leaving their fortifications around Fredericksburg, hence the reason of this move. We were paid off last week for 2 months, and I expressed $30 home to you, which will probably, by the time you receive this, be at the Herald office in Lancaster, where it was forwarded to. As soon as you receive this, please inform. It's very warm here now, and it makes me fairly dread to march, but I guess that I can stand it if the feet can. The Tafton boys are all well and hearty. I haven't any more to write at this time. I want you folks should write to me often this summer, and I will do as well as I can towards answering you. And if I should not write to you as I do, why, you mustn't stop, for I would like to hear from home once in a while. I haven't heard from home or anywhere else for about 2 weeks. I haven't time to write more this time. Give my love to all the folks. I'll write again the next opportunity. From your brother, Albert C. Morse. Camp near the Rappahannock, August 19th, 1863. Dear Brother Edward, as I have not written to you in quite a long time, I propose to do so today, as I know of nothing else to do. I am well, and so are the rest of the Tafton boys. As far as I know, there's not much going on with the army, as far as I can see, but I should judge the way that the thing looks now by the base of it will be changed, and it is promised by some that the army will move back to the vicinity of Centerville or Fairfax Station. Some report that General Meade's headquarters are now at the former place, but for the truth of the assertion, I could not vouch. We have a picket line on the other side of the Rappahannock, about 2 miles from the river. I came off picket last night. I did not see any graybacks while there are, although they were reported in the front line about 1 mile. There is some talk here that we will be sent to from the Army of the Potomac to join some other command, as it is stated that all Western men are ordered to be taken from this army. The 3rd and 5th Wisconsin Volunteers have gone to New York with several regiments from Indiana. I think that they will be sent to Charleston. They are drilling now in heavy artillery at Governor's Island. I think that I would like to go pretty well to some place. I don't care where, so that we won't have any more marching to do about 6 months. We are under our marching orders now, to be ready to march at a minute's notice. Have had orders to turn in our old Austrian rifles and draw the Springfield, which I'm glad of, as they are kept easier to clean than the old ones are. We got paid off last week. That doesn't do me much good as there's not much to buy, and what there is costs about 3 prices. I got $21 and she'll send $10 this time. If I can spare it, I'll send more soon. If you get this, please let me know immediately. Mother wants me to get a furlough. Tell her that it is something impossible to get, but if I should get a chance to get one, I shall not let it go unimproved. I haven't heard from Amos in a long time. When you write, please let me know what's going on in there in old Grant County, and what the folks are all about. Nothing more this time. Please excuse mistakes, and accept this. From your brother, Albert C. Morse. Goodbye. Camp near Petersburg, Virginia, January 17th, 1864. T.E. Alexander says tell you that he is well. He is First Sergeant Company of 7th Wisconsin, ACM. Dear Mother, I received a letter from you some time ago, and I have not answered it because I have had nothing to write, and also because it was accompanied with another which I believe I answered soon after its reception. And the principal reason that I write now is that I have not heard from home or any other place for a long time. The last letter I received was on New Year's Day. I have, I think, pretty good reasons for thinking that the folks outside of the army have forgotten that there is such a person as Albert Clark Morse. And if they have, I wish that they would not be so hypocritical as to say in every letter that they will write soon, when they do not mean one half of what they say. In fact, there are no letters from home or anywhere else but what are written on Sunday. No matter what part of the week they arrive, they have to wait until Sunday before they are answered, and then only because there is no other way to while away the time. I have thought several times that I would stop writing to anyone, and then again it would only be punishing myself, for I must admit that I love to hear from my friends, whether they do from me or not, and so I keep writing. I heard by one of John's letters that you are quite unwell. I hope that you may soon be better. But you must not work too hard, or I'm afraid that you never will. I have thought some of getting a furlough to go home this winter, but I presume that I shan't, as they are so hard to get. John is a little unwell, caused mostly by a hard cold. I guess nothing serious, though. My health is good. Haven't heard from Cash in a long time, and only by way of Eunice, although I've written to him several times. We were ordered to fill up 50 rounds of cartridges last night, and be ready to move at a minute's notice. The reason I believe is that the Johnnies were seen moving around on our left yesterday, and with the supposed intention of attacking us somewhere. There is not much news here, some talk of relieving the Ninth Corps. I hope that we will not have to do it, as I hate to leave these comfortable quarters while it is so cold. The principal talk in camp is about peace, which a great many think there will be brought about in some way before long. I shall have to stop now and go to brigade drill. I am back from drill and will try to finish this letter while eating dinner. I heard a salute fired of 100 guns in front of Petersburg. What it is for I do not know. Some good news, I am certain. One of the boys has just come in from out towards division headquarters, states that Fort Fisher is taken by General Hancock, who left not long since on a secret expedition for that place. Don't have any more at this time. Tell Ed, if you can, I wish you would send me $5, as I am out of money and nearly out of paper and envelopes, and also that I will return it as soon as we are paid, which I think will not be before the 15th of March. Please excuse mistakes. From your affectionate son, Albert Clark Morse. Camp near Culpeper, Virginia, March 13th, 1864. Dear Mother, as I have not heard from home since I left there, it now being over 1 month, I am getting rather anxious to know what you are all about, and to also know whether you are all alive or not. And now knowing that it is a great ways for one to travel to tell me all of these things, and not any of you being in a convenient way to come, why I will be perfectly satisfied if some of you are so condescending as to write me a few lines to let me know what you're all about. Now, I want you should keep this on your mind until someone writes. I should be very glad to hear whether Ed got that letter that I wrote to him while at Racine, containing a certificate from the Secretary of State for my town bounty, and I also want him to know that if he did not get it, that I am credited to the town of Tafton, and am according to law entitled to $200 bounty from that town. Now, Mother, if Ed never got the certificate, tell him to write, or get someone to the Secretary of State for another, for it is too much for a fellow in my circumstances to lose, and I will pay him well for it. Now this must be seen to write off, as delays are dangerous. That is, if he did not get my letter from Racine, which I hope he did. My health is not very good just now, for I am getting well with the mumps, and will be all right in a day or two. I got a letter from Cousin May E. Wright a few days ago. Uncle and Aunt are well. They are expecting you and Mattie out here this spring, and I want you to come back as soon as possible, for May is going to teach this summer, and will begin early. Now, Mother, if this thing is possible, I want Mattie to go with you, and I am willing to pay my share with Amos, and I don't know, but more too. I should be glad to have you start by the 1st of April if you can, and if we don't get paid off before that time, so that I can send you the money, maybe that Aim will lend you the money until I can send it to him. That is, if he has plenty of it to spare and is not afraid to trust me, for I admit that I owe him for transportation that should have been paid before this, but I could not very well spare it. But, nevertheless, tell him that it is good. Now, Mother, I am anxious to have you go, and go this spring you must, for Aunt's health is very poor, and I've doubts whether she sees another winter more, and I know that you want to see her. I had a first-rate visit there, although Aunt was not very well. I think they are about as fine as a couple of old people as I ever saw, and that they are enjoying themselves. Anyone can have ample proof by once going there and seeing them, but yet they are growing old, and want someone besides their own help to get along, and for this reason I hope that Philo may soon get home. They have a very nice place, with good improvements on it, and Uncle says that Lieutenant Philo made them all. May was teaching school some miles away from home, so that I did not get to see her. Well, I guess there is no use telling about them, as you will go and see them, as we have been here about 3 weeks. And we have got a log cabin built, and 5 of us live in it, and perfect comfortable, have plenty to eat and drink, and live bully, as the soldiers say. Our ration consists of beans, potatoes, dried apples, pork, beef, sugar, and coffee, and that's good enough for anyone. There is some appearance of a general move of the whole army, but whether it's an advance or a retreat, I don't know. The officers' wives have all been ordered to the rear, and of course that means there is something to be done. I can hardly think that this means an advance, as I believe Lee's army to be fully equal to ours, if not larger. The rebel deserters say that they think General Lee calculates to make another raid into Pina this summer, but I think that he would be tired of that and remember the lesson he got last summer. The weather is very warm and mild for this season of the year. The roads are not very good now, as there has been considerable rain lately. Well, I guess this will do it for now. Give my love to all our folks, and tell them I should be glad to hear from you. Goodbye, from your affectionate son, Albert C. Morse. Camp near Culpeper, Virginia, March 23rd, 1864. Dear Sister Mattie, I have just commenced to write you a letter, which I shall see to do if my hands don't tremble so as to stop, if which I begin to feel afraid it will. I have just gotten over the mumps, which I suppose is the cause of my poor writing. I got yours and Mother's letters last Sunday, and was very glad to hear from you. I also got a letter from Aim a few days ago, stating that Ed had got that order for my town bounty, which has been the source of considerable anxiety to me. I was very glad to get that picture of Mother, and should be glad to get one of yours if you can get any taken. Please send me one. I should have been glad to have heard that you are going to school this term, but suppose that the circumstances will not permit of it. I am sorry to hear that Mattie Wilson is so sick, and hope that she may soon recover. Well, Mattie, it won't hurt you to stay at home and learn how to do housework, and I'm afraid that there is a good many others in the vicinity of Tafton that a little work wouldn't hurt any. I'm glad that Cousin Inez has got a school, and if she is steady, I have no doubt but what she will do well. Say, Mattie, don't you think that you would like to go to Uncle Wright's with Mother this spring? Well, I've made up my mind that you shall go, for Uncle's folks want to see you very much, and I rather think that Mary will want someone to visit with while Mother's there. Besides, you would be company for Mamma on the road. Last night we had a very hard snowstorm. The snow fell to a depth of about 8 inches, and that's pretty big for these parts. There will, in all probability, be a general grand review when Grant takes command of the army. I had a letter from Cousin Philo a few days ago. He has been having a pretty serious time with his leg lately. It swelled so that he had to have it opened, but they could not find the ball. He was better when he wrote, but he had to walk on his crutches again. I had a letter from Uncle Wright last week, which I considered quite a compliment. The folks were all well. Well, Mattie, if Mother bothers you when you write, why don't you write when she does? But write a big letter all by yourself, can't you? Tell Ed and Cash that I should be glad to hear from them, and what it is about. Give my love to all. Yourself considered. Write soon. Albert C. Morse. P.S. I guess that we will get our pay tomorrow. ACM. Camp near Culpeper, Virginia. March 28th, 1864. Mr. John Brackett. Dear brother, I believe that when I left home that I'd promised to write, and the terms were that you should write to me in return. My health has not been very good lately, and I haven't done any duty since about the first of the month. But the doctor thinks that I will be able to in a couple of days. There is not much new in these parts today. Last night, around 12 o'clock, the orderly sergeant came around to inform the company that there would be a grand review today, and wanted them to be ready to march by 7 this morning. I don't know whether there will be any more of our corps reviewed or not, but I think that it is a grand review of the whole of the Army of the Potomac, and will probably be reviewed by General Grant and the President. The latter is all surmise, as I have no authority for it. Farther than that, he has always attended the spring grand reviews. I should try to go and see if I were not reported on the sick, and they, the company, might think that I was playing off. There have been no moves lately of the army that I know of either the infantry or the cavalry. There is a rumor here in the army that General Burnside is organizing a large army corps, Annapolis, Maryland, of 40,000 men. They will be composed of his old army corps, the 9th, and a new regiment now organizing in the States, and also some of the western Mississippi River regiments. They say, the soldiers, that the 25th Wisconsin is ordered to some part of this army. What I have last written is the general talk amongst the officers, and they also go further to admit that Burnside will be sent into North Carolina to operate in the rear of Richmond and cut off those railroads that supply the rebel capital. As I have not seen this in print, you will have to take it for what you think it is worth. But in my mind that there is a being such an expedition formed, I have no doubt. Rebel deserters come in almost every day. The other night there was 10 came in together. We had quite a warm spell of weather until lately. It has been rather grainy and cold. The regiment has been paid off about 1 week. There is not as much gambling as there has recently been, although money is pretty plenty, as most of the boys' recruits and all got from $50 to $75. Our recruits are learning to drill fast, and if they had to, could keep a good enough line to go into battle. I suppose that you've heard that George Ingle is dead. He died at Madison. Well, John, I don't think of any more at this time. I want you to excuse the bad spelling and bad writing, and if you have any compunction about the matter, just consider who it came from. Give my love to Eunice and the little ones. If you consider this worth answering, please answer soon. Yours in faith, hope, and charity, Albert C. Morse. Camp near Culpeper, Virginia, April 13th, 1864. Mr. Edward S. Morse. Dear brother, I've just received a letter from you which I was glad to get. I'm sorry to hear that you all have such hard colds, and hope that you may soon be over them. My health is not very good, and I dare not hardly calculate how long it will be before I am well, as I've thought for a long time, a day or two more, and then I will be all right. News is rather a scarce article here just now. The sutlers have all been ordered to the rear by the 16th of this month, and I suppose by that the time is not far distant when we will have to pull up stakes for the other side of the Rapidan. I presume about the 25th of this month, maybe a day or two before. I saw Cousin Amos Wilson about 10 days ago. He looks the best that I ever saw him. Henry Northrope was over from the 2nd last night. He had been to Culpeper and saw Amos. He was not very well then, and Hank said that he has the ague. I wrote you a letter a few days ago, which you had probably not got when you wrote this. I'm glad you've given up buying that timber. Not but what I think you need it, but that you can better afford to do without it than run in debt the way you are situated at present. I should think that you might make something on those cows, that is, if you don't keep them too long, and I believe that it will pay you far better than to fat them and sell them this fall than it would to winter them. The hay that they would eat next winter would almost pay for them. You spoke of the state debt. Well, sir, I will tell you what I want. I want that you should pay it off, and what you can't make out I will, that is, if you want me to. I calculate to send Uncle Wilson $50 in a day or two, and shall probably have him give you a note to keep for me until I come home. Well, Ed, as I don't think of any more to write tonight, and it is getting dark, I will bid you good night, and try my hand again in the morning. April 14th, 1864. Good morning, Ed. I've just been down to the doctor and got excused, and so propose to finish this letter. I've just expressed that $50 to Uncle Wilson. I sent it to Prairie du Chien, and that is where he will probably find it in a couple of weeks. There is not much going on in camp nowadays, save the usual drill. The recruits are learning fast. I believe that the boys are boxing up their extra clothing this morning to send to Washington until next winter, so that they will not have to carry it on these long marches. I calculate to carry a woolen blanket, rubber blanket, and a change of clothing, and I don't know, but I shall send you my overcoat, as it is rather risky to send it to Washington. I got a letter from Amos last night. He told me next time to direct to the regiment, but I believe I shall not, but shall send to Tafton, and if he has gone, I want you should forward to him. I don't think of any more this time, hoping to hear from you soon. I remain as your ever affectionate brother, Albert C. Morse. P.S. Ed, in the letter that I wrote before this, in answer to the one you wrote, I might have said something that you would think rather hard and angry to make you feel hard towards me. But if I did, it was altogether unintended, and to make you all right, you will only have to consider who it came from, for you know me well enough to know that I would not mean to make you feel bad. Give my love to all our folks, and tell little Linny that Uncle Al sends her kiss. Albert C. Morse. Camp near Culpeper, Virginia. April 17th, 1864. Dear Brother Edward, I received your letter last night and was very glad to hear from you and the folks at home. I was a little surprised to hear that Amos was married, but not that he would marry her sometime, but I thought that he would wait until he was out of the service. But bully for him, and I wish him the best kind of luck. I got a letter from John, and also one from Philo last night, which I shall answer soon. Philo's leg does not get better very fast, and he says that all he can wish for now is to get home without his crutches. I expect that Mother has started for Uncle Wright's before this time, and is probably having a good visit there now, and I hope that Mattie is with her, but I am afraid not. If I had known that Amos would not give her any money, I should have sent it myself. I have now about $60 that I have been calculating to send to Uncle Wilson for the past week, but could get no chance to express it, and I don't know but what I shall risk it by mail yet. I'm glad that you've given up buying that timber. Now, Ed, if I'm going to ask you one question, can you pay off all of your other debts but the state debt if you can, and want me to pay the state debt? Why, I believe I can pay that. Now, about what you owe me. I don't want you to make out any notes for me, that all I want is for you to be careful and not get into any debt anymore, and owe no one bill, and if you can do only that, why, I think that you, in the course of time, can pay me off and owe no one. For if my note would be a large one, why, every cent you can pay on it makes it so much smaller as there is no interest due on it, and I have never calculated to charge you any. Now, answer me fairly. Don't you think that this is the right view of the thing? I don't want you to think about your selling that timber in Loafer, but it is my opinion that it is the best thing you can do, as it has never been worth anything to you, I'm certain. How do the Good Templars prosper now? Do you think Matty will get a school this summer? Has Amos been ordered back to the regiment yet? Do you think his dreams are pleasant now, or don't you think he dreams much? Well, this is all I can think of at this time. Hoping to hear from you soon, I remain yours. Affectionate brother, Albert C. Morse. P.S. As I cannot send a kiss to Linny, tell her that Uncle Ann sends her some money to get some sugar kisses with, and wants her to divide with Uncle John's girls. A. C. Morse. Camp near Culpeper, Virginia, April 17th, 1864. Mr. John Brackett. Dear Brother, last night I received your letter of the 10th, which was very welcome. I was glad to hear that you were all well. I expect that Ames is enjoying himself hugely about now. The last letter that I got from him, he appeared to be in a hurry to get back to his regiment, but presume that he is over that before now, and is quite willing to stay where he is for a month or two at least. Well, he has my well wishes, and I hope that he may grow fat. My health is pretty good now, and I am able to do duty. The spring here is similar to that in Wisconsin, very backward. The mountain tops are still covered with snow. It rains here about half the time, and I don't believe that we shall be able to move before the 1st of May if we do as soon. I believe that the army is now ready for a forward movement, and only wait for favorable weather. We have sent away all of our surplus baggage, and the settlers have all gone to the rear, so as soon as the weather will green, you may expect to hear something stirring from the Army of the Potomac. John, I want that you should tell Ed for me that the money I let Aim have was to be paid to him, Ed. I just wrote to Ed, but forgot to tell him. You know that there are some things that a fellow must keep dark, and it would not be proper for me to write about. That is, every time that there are others besides you, that they will have to have a look at my letters. But there is one thing that you may be sure of. I am all right on the goose, and the eggs that the goose lays are not very small, as your advice is good. No, I've never read that book, but presume that I should take great pleasure in so doing? Question. Who are the persons that recommend it so highly? How is Likeness generally liked in Tafton? And do you think that he will be apt to continue with the school? I presume that if Parsons contemplates building a new academy, that there will be a chance to buy stock, and I should not wonder if some of the soldiers have a chance to purchase thereof. I had a letter from Philo last night. He gets along very slowly at the time. He wrote his leg was pretty badly swollen. Bully for George Hitchcroft. I say, and I hope that he may be successful in shooting a few more copperheads before his furlough expires, and only hit them where it takes only one ball to kill. No more this time. Please excuse mistakes, and accept this from your brother, Albert C. Morse. Near Bottoms Bridge, Virginia. Camp of the 7th Wisconsin, June 11th, 1864. Dear Brother Edward, I am, as you can see, back again to the regiment. When I arrived last night, I found a letter from you, dated the last of May, which I was very glad to get, as it informed me of the safe arrival of my money. My wound is well, and so am I. I was slightly wounded in the back by a bayonet caused by my falling down and getting up pretty quick when the next man behind me, not noticing me, hit me with his bayonet. Not bad enough to send me to the rear for a few days. Lauren Parsons is with the company now, and he looks first rate. We are camped on the left of the 9, near the Chickadee, and are at present doing picket duty. About the fighting I shall not attempt to tell you, as you can see that in the papers. There has been no fighting of any importance for several days past, and I do not think that there will be any more hard fighting as there has been, and it will mostly be done by siege. I understand that Grant is waiting for some of the big guns. There are several mortars planted near the center of the line, and they worry the rebels considerably. The Johnnies have some pretty heavy guns across the river from here, and once in a while they salute us with what the boys call camp kettles, but they are better known as 65-yard shells. They've done no harm to us yet. The Army in general feels well and have confidence in Grant and say that Richmond is sure to come this time, if it does take a good while to take it. The rebels themselves admit that Richmond is their only hope. Last night, 9 Johnnies crossed the river and came over to our boys. The pickets are very close together and do not fire at each other. The boys get the most of their tobacco while trading with them for coffee. If you can, I wish you would send me a herald once in a while. When I got here last night, I found only 3 letters from me. The rest of about a dozen were destroyed. The news has just come up into camp that Fort Darling has been captured. I hope it is so well that you will have named your boys after me, haven't you? Well, I can't say that I think much of it. Where is Cash, and what's he about? The next time you write to me, tell me all the news. No more from me this time. Where is Maddie teaching? Give my love to all our folks, and yourself, from your affectionate brother, Albert C. Morse. General Hospital, City Point, June 27th, 1864. Dear Mother, I now see myself to write you a few lines concerning my health and wound. My health is good and my wound is nearly well, so that I am perfectly comfortable. I was wounded on the 18th by a piece of shell which struck me just above the right eye, making a slight wound which is nearly healed now. The doctor wants that I should stay and help take care of the wounded when I get well. I don't know, but I shall. The place I was wounded, we, our Division 4th, Division 5th Corps, were ordered to charge and carry at all hazards the rebels' works in front, which we tried hard to do but could not, as they were too strong for us. It was the hottest fire that I was ever under. We lost, without doubt, 3/4 of our men. I do not think that out of the 560 men that started from Culpeper with me, there is over 60 left in our regiment, and I'm afraid that there will not remain there as long as they're being killed and wounded every day. Our rifle pits and theirs are only about 200 yards apart, and the boys cannot get out to cook their coffee without endangering their lives, as the rebel sharpshooters are almost sure to hit some of them. There is now a very heavy cannonade in the direction of Petersburg, but that is nothing new as I hear it every day. Giles Parker was killed on the 18th, and if you knew them, I would tell you all the killed and wounded. This has been an awful campaign, and some of the soldiers have not had a change of clothing since we left camp at Culpeper on the 5th of May. The wounded are being sent north as fast as possible, but I do not see as there is any difference in the number here, for as many arrive daily as are sent away. They are cared for us as well as could be expected. The Sanitary Commission is a great help. The Christian Commission does not amount to much. I hardly know what to think of General Grant. I hope that he will succeed, but I'm almost afraid that he will not. To be sure, he has made some great flank movements, and has lost a great many men in doing so, but he has never whipped the rebels in front any more than they have us. The works at Petersburg are very strong, and can only be carried by siege. The darkies do well, and make as good soldiers as any of us. I don't think of any more. Please write soon. Love to all, from your affectionate son, Albert C. Morse. P.S. Direct to the regiment. City Point, July 30th, 1864. Dear Mother, having nothing else to do, I thought a few lines from you would not be out of the way, so I will write. I'm not very well, but some better than I was a few days ago, and I presume I shall be all right before long. I've had some fever and the cholera morbus. My wound is all right. There is a great many sick coming in here every day, most of them cases of the summer complaint. The sanitary and Christian commissions are doing a great deal of good. They cannot give much where there is so many, but what they do give is gratefully received by the soldiers. Last night the Christian Commission brought me a can of cranberry sauce. I haven't heard from home in a very long time, but I presume I shall find plenty of letters from you at the regiment when I get there. It rained all day yesterday, the first real rain that we had to speak of in 7 weeks. It has been pretty quiet at the front for several days past, until last night when there has been some pretty heavy firing. Of the results I have not heard. You must not worry about me, as I am pretty confident that I shall be all right in a few days. I don't think of any more to write this time. Give my love to all our folks, with yourself considered. From your affectionate son, Albert C. Morse. Camp near Petersburg, Virginia, August 3rd, 1864. Dear Mother, as I have not written home for more than a week, I suppose a few lines will not be thrown aside unnoticed. I received a letter from you a little over a week ago, which found me quite well, although not able to do duty. I am on duty today for the first time since the 18th of June. I came to the regiment a little over a week ago, where I could see the fort blown up on the 30th, but was not engaged and, comparatively speaking, in no danger. Our loss was quite heavy, but I do not think that we lost any more than the Johnnies. I think that the artillery firing that day was the heaviest I'd ever heard. It's generally believed here that the Johnnies are mining under one of our forts, and will probably blow it up before long. For this reason, we are called out under arms at 3 o'clock every morning. Our brigade is in a pretty good place now, as we are on the left of the line doing picket duty, and not bothered by shell as they've been. We are on picket 2 days on and 2 days off. They moved out here last Sunday. We drew pretty good rations now. The other night we drew codfish and mackerel. Besides these, we often draw potatoes, onions, dried apples, pickles, and once in a while cabbage. Not in very large quantities, though, but enough to make our other rations go well. I'm sorry to hear that Edward's health is so poor, and hope that he may soon be better. Tell him that this summer is no time to be sick, especially in wartime. I think that you are doing well with your cows. Hope cheese will be worth more, though, for it sells for 50 cents a pound here. I got a letter from Maddie Wilson a little later than yours, stating that they did not think that she could live through another night. The news came very unexpected to me, as I had not heard from there in a long time, and did not know that she was unwell. I hope that she may get well, but I am afraid it is all in vain. You wanted to know if there is anything I wanted. Well, yes, there is. I want that you and the rest of the folks to write to me once in a while. If nothing else, and as postage stamps are pretty scarce here and hard to get, I wish that you would send me a few, and I will make it all right. I don't think of any more I want. But if I can get these things expressed handy this winter, I will send you some things. I don't think of any more this time. Did Maddie teach school this summer? Give my love to Ed and the rest of the folks. From your affectionate son, Albert Clark Morse. Camp near the Weldon Railroad, September 4th, 1864. Dear Brother Edward, I received your very welcome letter a few days ago, and with no news but what will be old by the time it gets to you. I shall try to answer it. I've just heard from good authority that Atlanta is ours. One of the boys who was at work yesterday heard General Grant say that he had official information to that effect, and it was also read to the regiment this morning. And by the way, the surrender of Fort Morgan in Gaines and the capture of 1,500 prisoners and nearly 300 pieces of artillery, and the rebel ram, Tennessee, is very bad news to take. My health is middling good, but I am poorer than Job's turkey. I don't expect much more fighting in this quarter very soon unless the Johnnies attack us. And any time they feel like pitching in, why, let 'em come, I say. I think they would go back with sore heads and rather the worse for wear. The only show that there is for a fight here now is that the Early may leave for the valley and reinforce Lee. I think to overpower Grant and turn our flank and get in the rear, but that won't make any difference as we are fortified on both sides. Our occupying the Weldon Road appears to be a rather hard pill for the Johnnies to take. I think that you have done pretty well with your cows this summer, one of the best trades you've ever made. I've sent Uncle Wilson $60 by Adams Express Company this payday, and $130 by Lauren when he started for home. I wish you would tell him to let me know if he ever gets it. Ed, I just got a letter from Maddie stating that you thought of enlisting, which I don't want you to do if you can help it. I don't. Though if you do, Cash must stay home. I don't think that the war will last over 8 months longer at the most. I saw Hank Oviatt the other day, and he came out as a substitute from Pennsylvania and gets $1,500 for 2 years. I wrote to Emma the other day and said that I would send some money in it, which I forgot to do, but we'll make it all right some time or other. No more news this time. Give my love to all the folks. From your brother, A.C. Morse. Camp near the Weldon Railroad, September 14th, 1864. Dear Mother, I received your ever-welcome letter yesterday, which I now hasten to answer to relieve your fear about my health. My health is good, the best it has ever been since I left home last winter, so you must not expect to see me home on that account for some time. If I never get home until I'm sick enough to get a furlough and come, I don't think I shall want to come very soon. I hardly know what to think about Edward's enlisting. If he is sure that he will be drafted, I say enlist by all means, and still if there is any show to get rid of it. It seems as though his place is at home, but Mother, I don't want you to let Cassius enlist on any conditions, for I scarcely think that he could stand the hardships of one winter's camp life, say nothing about an active campaign. There has been no fighting here, save for the usual picket firing on our right and in front of Petersburg. We all expect that there will be a big fight here before long, and that the Johnnies will be the attacking party, which will suit us as we are ready for them. Let them come from which way they will, front, rear, or flank. Our Russians are good, and have been all the time on this campaign, and there is plenty of them. General Meade came back from his furlough yesterday, and they fired a salute for his return. The cars are now running from City Point across to the Weldon Railroad, so we will not be worried to get supplies if it should rain and make the wagon road impassable. I got a letter from Cousin Laurie yesterday, which I shall answer soon. In this I shall send a little money to pay for those stamps you sent me, and you can keep the rest and treat the little ones for Uncle Al. No more this time. Say love to all, from your affectionate son, Albert C. Morse. P.S. I have a plenty of stamps. Camp near the Weldon Railroad, October 5th, 1864. Dear Brother, I received your welcome letter about 1 week ago, and have not answered it simply because I was too lazy and did not feel like it. My health is good. For the past week we have been moving from one place to another, building breastworks and leaving them, but as luck would have it, we were merely lucky enough to not have to use them. There has been some fighting, but nothing very serious. About 1 week ago, Warren swung around his left, across the Weldon Railroad to near the South Side Road, taking quite a good number of prisoners, and making the line shorter and stronger, and placing us more on the Johnnies' flank. The thing has been a success so far, and so if we have not done as much as you would naturally like us to have by taking Petersburg, it makes it just so much easier captured. There have been some fighting with Butler's forces, which hurt the Johnnies more than it did us. It will sometime, but Petersburg and Richmond are ours this fall, certain. Well, I'm glad you want to pay that state debt this fall, and I will help you all I can. You want I should let you have $200. Well, I will if I can. I want that you should see about that town order, and see if it will be paid this fall. If not, see what it will sell for. If payable, I will let you have that money. I shall send Uncle Wilson $100 this payday, unless I am mistaken. I haven't sent yet, but soon I shall, as I get a chance to express it, and that will be when I find someone goes to City Point that I can send by. About the money I sent to Lauren, I think he has played me a mean trick. I sent, as I said before, $130, and it can be proved in the company by several that saw me give him money. Tell him that he must pay Uncle Wilson that other $100, and make no bones about it. I don't think of any more this time. Please write soon to your brother, Albert C. Morse. Camp near the Weldon Railroad, October 13th, 1864. Dear Sister Mattie, I received yours with also one from Emma 2 or 3 days ago, and have been out on pickets that I have not had a very good chance to answer them. We picket in sight of the Johnnies, only in an open field between us, about a quarter of a mile apart. The pickets we relieved were firing constantly, but as soon as we took their place and did not fire at them, it soon stopped, and there has been no firing there since. The boys hollered over to them and asked them if they did not want some of our coffee. Their answer was that they had plenty of coffee, but had more beef than they wanted, probably meaning that they captured not long ago. Some of our boys hurrahed for Lincoln, and they wished him in that bad place that the good book tells us but to cap all. Some of them hurrahed for Little Mac, which I think shows plain enough who ought to be our next president. And if this fall is favorable for a campaign, I think it will tell pretty hard on the rebellion, and we may look for a peaceful day next 4th of July. We are on picket half of the time, so that we cannot spend much time in camp. The boys generally live pretty well about now, as it is not long since they were paid off, but it costs a great deal. Onions are 15 cents per pound, and also sweet and Irish potatoes are almost all vegetables. I generally have sweet potatoes, oysters, or something from the sutler that is so good it takes some considerable of my money, but I still have a plenty left and some to send home. I'm glad that you are going to school this winter, and I presume I shall help you if it comes handy if you go. When will you start and how long will you stay? It is getting to be quite cold here now. The other night there was quite a frost, and the way it feels now I should judge that there will be one tonight. I hope that Ed won't be drafted, but if he is, let him come. The more the merrier, and many hands make light work, the old proverb says, I believe. I haven't written to or received a letter from Uncle Wright's folks since I was wounded. I think they answered my last, but they went with my letters that were destroyed. Where is Amos Wilson, and what is he about? No more this time. Write soon, and let us know all the news that is afloat. Love to all our folks. I hope that your visit may prove a pleasant one. Please excuse this dirty paper. It is some that got wet in my portfolio on the last march that we made. Albert C. Morse. Camp near the Weldon Railroad, October 14th, 1864. Mr. John W. Brackett. Dear Brother, I received your letter written in return for one which I wrote you last spring while near Culpeper, about 1 week ago, and was glad to get it, as it contained more general news than any that I have received for a long time. My health is good, which is something worthwhile for any soldier to say. Everything down here by way of the army is favorable, and all goes well. There is some fighting in some parts of the lines almost every day, and when infantry is not fighting, there is plenty of artillery firing to make up the difference. Our pickets have in front of us been advanced within speaking distance of the Johnnies, but they are quite friendly, and as yet there have been no picket firing in front of our brigade since the line was advanced. Most of the regiments around here were packed up last night, and under arms in expectation of an attack on our left, but all to no purpose, only to tire the men and make them a little sleepy. The army is recruiting fast. Every day a long train brings up fresh troops. We have not got any yet, and presume we won't have, as there is some talk of consolidating these 3 Wisconsin regiments. But I can hardly think it can be done, as the 6th and ours are veteran organizations. Nearly all of our old officers have mustered out and left us to shirk for ourselves, which ain't too bad after all. The latest news from the states give old Union a big majority in the state elections, which shows plain enough where the president will come from and who it will be. Old Abe will get most of our soldier vote. Our regiment has about 20 McClellan men in all, and 1 or 2 Fremont. While we were out on picket the other night, I heard the Johnnies hurrah for Little Mac, which I think shows plain enough which way the wind blows. It is getting to be quite cool here, so that a person wants his coat on most of the time. So that if my heart bursts, I hope to be able to keep the most of it inside of that, if it does come through the hide a little. But I guess there is no danger of life failing at present, unless there is something more serious than that to take place. Yes, I've been quite successful in my investments since I came home, and I've made very well at it. I've sent no money home yet, this payday, but I've some to send as soon as I can express it. I don't think any more worthy of your notice. I shall be glad to hear from you any time you think a few lines from me worth your attention. Give my love to Eunice and the little ones. Tell them Uncle Al would be glad to see them. Yours fondly, Albert C. Morse. Camp near the Weldon Railroad, November 6th, 1864. Dear Mother, I've just received your truly welcome letter, and there is no use telling you that I was glad to get, for you know that I am always glad to hear from you. I am well, and hope this may find you the same. I have no news to write to you, and consequently scarcely know where to begin. I'm glad that George Smith has got the post office of Tafton, and hope that he may be able to keep it, and I also hope that he will stay with Uncle Wilson. But $300 is a great inducement to go to Brown's, and as he needs money, I should not wonder if he went there. There is one thing I can't understand. That is how it will be worth $300 to Brown to having it there, and unless he calculates to get it himself after the next presidential election, and thinks by getting George there that he will have a better chance. I haven't heard from Cash since he was in Madison. If I can get a furlough this winter, I shall try to go and see him for a few days if he stays at Arlington Heights. I'm glad that Maddie has gone to West Union to school, and hope that she will enjoy herself. If I can, I shall help her some this winter. I haven't written to Cousin May since last spring, but I've started to write to her several times since then, and every time that I did so, we have had marching orders before I could finish the letter, and I am almost afraid to start to write now, as I'm afraid that it will bring orders to march. I've got me quite a comfortable house built. There is 3 of us that live in it now, and we expect another when he gets back from the hospital. We live first rate with what rations we draw from the government, and what we buy from the settlers, which generally consists in potatoes and onions, and sometimes sweet potatoes. The first are worth 10 cents per pound, and the latter 2 articles 15 per pound, so you see that it takes some money. I understand that there was quite a fight in front of the 2nd Corps last night. We could hear the firing from here very plain, as it was only about 2 miles from here. The fighting commenced about midnight, caused, I understand, by some Johnnies volunteering to try and capture Fort Sedgwick in front of Petersburg. They were repulsed, with heavy loss in killed and wounded, and about 150 prisoners. In a late advance on our south side rail, our regiment captured about 230 without losing a man, and the regiment only numbers now about 130 muskets all told. No, Mother, I thank you for offering to send me some mittens if I want them, but I don't need them, and if I should, I think that I am more able to furnish them myself than you are, and as times are so hard, you will need everything to get along at home. Mother, do you know whether Lorin has paid the other $130 to Uncle Wilson or not? I wish that you or Ed would let me know, as it stands the next time you write, if it will not be too much trouble. I sent Uncle Wilson $70 by Adam Express Co. the latter part of last month, and I hope that he has got it by this time. No more this time. Remember me to all the little children, and tell them that Uncle Al would like to see them very much. From your affectionate son, Albert C. Morse. Camp near Petersburg, December 20th, 1864. Mr. Edward S. Morse. Dear Brother, as I have not written home for quite a while, I suppose that you are all quite anxious to hear from me. I am well, with the exception of a hard cold. I should have written before, if it had not been for John, and I suppose that he has told you all that I was all right, and another reason that the 6th Corps had gone into our old quarters near the Weldon Road that we left to go on that raid. And I had no place to write, only out in the cold, so I concluded that I would, until I got my new cabin built, which is now accomplished, so I shall proceed. We started on our raid for the Weldon Road on the morning of the 7th, and marched that day as far as Sussex Courthouse. Stayed there all night, and the next day marched to near Jarrett Station, where we struck the railroad and commenced destroying it, which we continued to do until the next night. We burned all the ties and bent the rails from where the railroad crosses the Nottoway River to Belfield. Also burnt the bridges over the Meharin R. Our forces did not go into Hicksford, but I presume that they might have done so if we only had a couple days more rations. We were not so troubled with the Johnnies, scarcely any. The cavalry skirmished with them some. While on the raid, we had plenty of fresh meat, fresh beef, pork, mutton, and once in a while chicken or turkey, but they were scarce. We burned all of the houses and other buildings that we could find. I do not think that the Johnnies will try to rebuild the road again. When we got back to camp, the 6th Corps occupied our old quarters, and after laying around for 2 or 3, they concluded to let us build new quarters near where we were before we went to take the Weldon Road last summer. I have just got mine finished today, and shall be perfectly satisfied with it if they will only let us stay in it until next spring. John was just in here. He is all right, has got his shanty finished, and is healthy and hearty. Mr. Allen has just stepped in. He belongs to Company K of this regiment, looks gay as a peach, and I guess that is all the subs generally will be able to stand it within their 1 year. I got a letter from Emma a few days ago. I shall answer it soon. The last news from General Sherman, he had just captured Fort McAllister, and has also reported today that he captured Savannah. The news from Thomas is first rate, and so it is from all quarters. You'll see in the newspapers what I mean. I see by the papers today that there has a large fleet just left Fort Monroe for some place on the southern coast. It is commanded by General Butler and Admiral Porter. When you write, I want you to tell me just how you stand in the financial way, and whether you have cashed that town order. If I can, I shall furlough and come home this winter. Give my love to all the folks. No more present from your brother, Albert C. Morse. P.S. Did you ever get a warrant that I sent home some time ago, showing that I was a corporal? ACM. Camp near Petersburg, Virginia, December 25th, 1864. Mr. Edward S. Morse. Dear Brother, I received your truly welcome letter yesterday morning, written on the 17th. It found me all right, with the exception of a rather hard cold, which makes my lungs feel rather sore, but I expect it to be over soon. I am sorry to hear that Sister Sophia is unwell, and hope that she may be better. We had news a few days ago that General Sherman had captured Savannah with all of General Hardee's forces. This news was from rebel sources and was generally believed. But this morning, General Sherman's own official dispatch was received, stating that he had captured the city, I believe on the 20th. But General Hardee, knowing that he would assault the place, had succeeded in crossing the river with a part of his infantry and most of his artillery, so that what he captured amounted to about 8,000 prisoners in the city with about 20,000 inhabitants, with some gunboats and several engines and nearly 200 cars. So you can see that news is good, but not as good as we had reason to expect at first. I think that you've done well this summer, and according to your own account, are able to pay all debts this winter, with the exception of mine. I hardly know what to tell you about the use of that money. Speculations are rather dangerous just now, as everything is up, and if the war ever ends, which I think there is a pretty fair prospect that it will, and that before too long, too, it has got to come down, and probably with a rush. Now, my advice is, if you want to speculate, do a cash business, and don't trust on no conditions whatsoever. And another thing, Ed, it is twice as easy to pay debts now while everything is up, as it will be after the war is over. From what I could understand by your letter, you calculate to buy another horse to mate with the one you got from Cash, and take them up north and sell them. If you do that, you'll be minus a team, won't you? And have to get another when you get back, which might cost you as much, or more, deducting the expenses. And even if you should make at it, could you not pay the state debt then, as well as to wait until next fall? If you could keep it through the summer, what will you do with it to make more than the interest would amount to? If you do keep it, I want you to keep it invested in something that will cash for the money at any time you will want it. Taking your hay hogs and cattle according to your lowest estimate and making liberal deductions for expenses, you will have enough money left over after paying all off, except us boys, to do a pretty fair business with it. In other words, the way I have reckoned it up, you will have enough to pay all except me, and have some $30 or $40 left. Now, sir, you know, ever since I proposed to help get you out of debt, it has been my desire to have you owe no one but me, and with that drawing no interest. I thought with careful management, it would be easy enough to do. Camp near Petersburg, Virginia, January 1st, 1865. Miss Mattie Morse. Dear Sister, I received your truly welcome letter, yet unexpected, last night, written Christmas. I was really glad to hear from you and home, and to hear that Christmas passed so pleasantly. I wish you all a happy New Year, and wish that I were there with you to spend the first day of the same, especially so about dinner time. I expect to have rather an extra dinner, for a soldier as I have now, 2 cans of turkey and a loaf of soft bread for 3 of us, and should have more if the sutler were not sold out. But there is no use of any excuses, as we shall have no visitors, and I believe that it is not fashionable to make where there is none but the present company concerned. I am sorry to learn that Cousin Molly is unwell, and hope that by the next she may be better. I think old Santa Claus very good to you at home, and no doubt but you all feel thankful to him for being so generous. I am glad that you had such a fine visit at Uncle Horace's. The next time you want me to write to you, should send me his post office address. Mattie, you must not blame me if I do not write much news, for there is none to write. I had a letter from Philo a few days ago. He was well when he wrote, and ready to answer any correspondence that he may receive from his friends, as he says that he has plenty of time. He is studying medicine, he says, in a little one-horse town, and has but few acquaintances, and so would like to hear from his old friends, the more the often, and want you to write to him. I haven't heard from Cash in a very long time. When you write, tell me how and where he is. Camp life is very dull lately. Scarcely any news but what is old. We have been expecting something before this from Butler and Porter, but all we have heard yet is that they have managed to capture Fort Fisher near Wilmington, and I doubt the truth of this. I play checkers with John come to pass away time, but I don't suppose that I amuse him much, as we may have 7 or 8 games, and I've only beat him once. The weather is very cold here. Today the coldest that I've seen this winter. I don't know when we will be paid off. We mustered yesterday for pay, and have 4 months' pay due besides 1 installment of bounty. Well, I can't possibly think of any more to write this time. Love to all our folks. Albert Morse. Camp of the 7th Wisconsin Volunteers, near Hatcher's Run, February 14th, 1865. Dear Mother, John is all right. I received your letter last night, which I was very glad to get. We are in camp, which is near the late battlefield of the 6th and 7th. The weather is very cold here now, and as I've been ever since we left our winter quarters, which was about 1 week ago yesterday. We marched in the direction of Dinwiddie Courthouse, and halted for the night about 75 miles from our camp, and had just gotten our fires built for the night, and ordered back to connect with the 2nd Corps on our right, which had a very severe skirmish with the Johnnies that afternoon and repulsed them. We marched nearly all night, and the next morning camped over near the 2nd Corps until about noon, when our division, General Crawford's, was ordered forward in our front and engaged the rebels, which were known to be there in considerable force. Our regiment and the 150 Pennsylvania bucktails were deployed forward as skirmishers, and soon found them in their skirmish pits, which they were soon driven from, and pressed back for about 2 miles. We drove 2 divisions, and when the 3rd came up and flanked us on our left, forcing back the rest of our corps, we had to fall back to where we started from. I came, and in fact nearly all of the regiment came, near being captured, as the Johnnies pressed back the left so fast as to nearly surround us. The losses in our regiment were light. I believe about 25 in all. Our company only lost 1 wounded, George Atkinson, and Tom Alexander, formerly orderly sergeant of our company, but now first lieutenant of Company H, was wounded and captured by the Johnnies. The campaign has been very severe ever since we left camp. The first 3 or 4 nights, we got scarcely no sleep at all, and the 2nd day's fighting, I was on skirmish lines all day, in a regular old northeaster, on a sleet storm, and what made it worse, could not stir to keep warm without being fired on by 1 or more of the rebels. Our division was complimented very highly by Generals Warren and Meade for the way which we acted under fire, and for which we were ordered to Baltimore to report to General Halleck for special services. We went as far as City Point, and were ordered back, as the brigade was not all needed, and as the rest of the men had gone, we had to come back. Some of the men think we will go yet. I wish we could, for I think we have done our part in the field, but I hardly think there is any such good luck awaits us. I heard from Amos a few days ago. He's well. I will write again as soon as I have an opportunity, but I want to get some winter quarters built first, if they will let us build some. No more this time. Love to all. A.C. Morse. Camp of the 7th Wisconsin Veteran Volunteers near Hatcher's Run, February 23rd, 1865. Mr. Edward S. Morse. You must not make a mistake and take this for the Tribune. Dear brother, I received a letter from you a few days ago, which I suppose you would like a reply to. I am well, with the exception of a hard cold which most of the boys are troubled with. Just now, in consequence of being reposed with much lately, as we were out in some pretty hard storms while on that skirmish at Hatcher's Run. Nate Allen went to the hospital yesterday morning. He has been quite unwell for some time. I should not be surprised if he would not be back in the field at all, as he is not very tough. I've just got my third shanty for this winter built, and it is comfortable as one could wish for this time of year, and yet it is so cold that one needs something besides a shelter tent to keep them warm in. It has been quite warm for the past few days, and has rained some this morning. The roads are becoming settled, but will not be good traveling for some time yet, as it freezes nights and thaws daytimes. I do not look for a general advance for some time yet, unless the Johnnies send over considerable forces to oppose General Sherman, and in that case it would necessitate an attack here to draw them back. I think that in the last move on the left was for that purpose only, and that it had the desired effect. I am well satisfied. The news from Sherman is splendid. He appears to go most anywhere he pleases and with but little opposition. You will see what I mean in the papers before this reaches you. I think the rebellion is going down now, about the fastest it has at any time during the war. There was quite an excitement here last night. Orders came to pack up and be ready to march at a moment's notice, and the boys did not like it much. I tell you, as some of them had just gotten their shanties completed and ready to sleep in for the first time, and the notion that they had to leave them did not suit them well, I tell you. Well, we filled our cartridge boxes that everyone had 50 rounds apiece, drawed 2 days' rations, and were ready, and then told us we could go to bed, and this morning they told us we were only ready to march, that in case the Johnnies attack us as they were seen yesterday moving around our left, and was reported by deserters that they would try and drive us back today, but they haven't yet. I guess it's more of a scare than anything else. Must stop for dinner. Had our dinner, soft bread, pork, and coffee, which is good enough for anyone if we can only get enough of it. Our campground is in a good dry spot and plenty of wood and water close by, and all I ask is to stay here until the war is over, without any more fighting to do. Have to go on picket rather often, but that is nothing. When you get used to it, by the way, it takes quite a while to do. I'm glad that Aunt and Uncle Wilson have dissolved, as I think that the profits are none too much for one. For my part, I think that it would rather that George Smith would stay with Uncle Wilson than to move to Brown's. Some way I fancy that there will be no good from it if he goes there. I guess that Brown wants it for himself, and calculates by getting George there that he will get it at some future time. As you will not pay the state debt this fall, what have you done with the money? Have you got it so that you can make money of it at some future time whenever the case may require it? I hope that you have it laid out so that you can make of it. Ed, you must remember that you have to pay sometime, and the sooner the better. To my motion question, how would you feel to be out of debt? Have you sold your hay and hogs, or have you concluded not to this winter? I mean the hogs. No, you must not call me inquisitive, but say that I'm just grumbling, as I've often been called old grumbler, which is not far out of the way, I guess. You say that the times are hard. Well, I know that, but be as economical as possible. And buy as little as you can to get along with. You want that I should take a mortgage, which I shall not do at present, and when I do, if ever, I shall lift the other and take it on the whole place. I heard from Amos a few days ago. He was in when he wrote at Williams Mill and was all right. I have a letter from Matt and one from Em, which I will answer when I can. But you must all consider when I write that it is to you all. I want some one of you to write as often as once a week, and I will answer promptly unless on the march, and then will do the best I can. I'm glad that Mother's cough is better. Tell her for me to be careful. I got that money in postage stamps, which I will make all right payday. Our box hasn't come in yet. We are expecting the paymaster every day. I haven't room to write more this time. Love to all our folks. Tell your little ones that Uncle Al don't forget them. I expect Lenny is getting to be quite a large girl. I want to hear from you soon. Your affectionate brother, Albert C. Morse. Camp near Hatcher's Run, March 7th, 1865. Dear Mother, I received your kind and affectionate letter yesterday morning, and shall now, if I have time, reply. I had heard of the death of little Jay by John's letter some time ago, so that it was no news to me. I feel sorry for them, but death, is something that none of us knows but little about while in health, but terrifies us more than anything else as its approach nears us, and something that we all expect. Not now, but when we get to 60 or 70 years old, and I don't know, but then we would expect to live a few years longer. John takes it pretty hard. Our box hasn't come back yet, but I'm expecting it every day. I saw Obadiah Noble this morning. He looks well and capable of doing Uncle Sam some good service. He is in Company K of this regiment. We were paid off last week, and I have some money that I shall express as soon as possible as I get an opportunity to Uncle Wilson. There is not much to do here now, only drill and picket duty, which is not very hard. We are living pretty well just at present. Had buckwheat cakes for breakfast. Rather dear flour, though. 1.25 cents per package of 6 pounds. Well, I shall have to stop for the present, as I have to go on general police and help clear up the campground. While I'm at liberty to proceed, yesterday, while on drill, the colonel stated that he had orders to drill us for the special service, and that although the drill might be hard, yet we would never regret it. But what that drill or special service is, none of us know and can only surmise. Some think that as the rest of the brigade has left, that we are to have some easy place. I hope so, but if I were to judge from the drill, we are to have a chance to display our valor for the old flag by charging the enemy somewhere. There is some talk that we are to go to Corps headquarters, as the regiment that is there doing provo duty, time is about out. There has been the past few days from New York Regiment coming to our brigade, and they state that they have orders not to build quarters, as we will soon leave ours and they can have them. But I presume that we will stay where we are until the spring campaign has commenced, and do regular fighting with the Army of the Potomac, as we always have. I haven't time to write more. Love to all, yourself included. Your son, Albert C. Morse. Camp near Hatcher's Run, March 22nd, 1865. Mrs. Emma Morse. Dear Sister, I received your letter last night, which was really welcome to me, as it is the first I have received from home in nearly 2 weeks, and in fact from anywhere else. There is not much going on here now, only the usual drill and reviews, which have been quite numerous of late. There is some talk here now, and it is generally believed that the Southern Confederacy have offered terms of peace. Our chaplain states that General Grant has telephoned to Washington for the President to come to City Point to General Lee and President Davis, as he, Grant, thinks that they have offered terms that he, Lincoln, will accept. I hope that there can be some terms be made before the spring campaign opens, as it will save a great deal of bloodshed. The last heard from General Sherman, he had left Fayetteville, and was moving on Goldsboro, where he will probably join forces with General Schofield. Deserters come through our lines nearly every day. Yesterday, 3 came through the lines in front of our regiment, bringing their horses and equipments with them. They were all well dressed, and looked as though they had plenty to eat. General Sheridan is probably at White House Landing by this time, as we had an official order from him stating that that was his destination. The settlers were ordered away from here a little more than a week ago, and I heard this morning that they were ordered back. If this is true, you need not look for a move in these parts soon, and if only make peace not at all until we start home. John's health is good, and I guess he enjoys soldiering as well as most of the men. I haven't heard from Amos or Cassius in a long time. I don't know the reason that Cash don't write, as I've written to him twice since I had a letter from him. Ed owes me 2 or 3 letters. In one of them I sent him $10. In another, a warrant stating that I was sergeant. I also sent a box of clothing to him the other day, directed to Bridgeport. I want you to be sure and have him let me know if he gets the same. I did not know that I owed you a letter, as I have been congratulating myself on having all letters answered. No more this time. Love to all our folks. Yours with respect, Albert C. Morse. P.S. Write soon. ACM. Camp near Arlington Heights, May 19th, 1865. Miss Mattie A. Morse. Dear Sister, I believe that I am in debt to you for some 2 letters, and to the debt list I propose to answer one of them this afternoon. We have been in this camp just 1 week tonight, and previous to this, we have done some pretty hard marching. We left Manchester on the morning of the 6th, and marched at a rate of 25 miles per day before we arrived here. There is a great difference shown now in Virginia to what there used to be before the war was closed. People congregated in large numbers at the several houses along the roads to see us as we passed. The soldiers were not allowed to forage or straggle from their commands any more than they would have in Maryland or Pennsylvania. We are camped near our old camp where we were the first winter we were out, but it does not look much like it did then, as it is all fenced up and cultivated. There is a great deal of talk about going home now, but I presume that we will not get home before our time is out, which is the 1st of January, 1867. I saw Cash last Sunday and had a first-rate visit with him. There is some talk of our going to the States soon. If we do, I presume I can get a furlough and go home in a few days. If not, then I don't know when I shall see you again. Cash will probably be at home in a few weeks. Also Amos, as there is orders to muster all men out of the service whose term expires before the 1st of October. Veterans and regulars will be kept until their time is out, I presume. There is to be a grand review of the Army of the Potomac on the 23rd, of the Army of the Cumberland on the 24th. Well, I don't feel very well, so you must excuse me for not writing more. I want you to write soon. Love to all our folks. Albert C. Morse. Camp near Jefferson, Indiana. June 30th, 1865. Miss Mattie A. Morse. Dear Sister, I received a letter from you a few days ago, and shall, as I have a little time to spare, try and answer it. I want you to tell John that since he left here for home on furlough, that I have received 4 letters directed to him, 3 from Eunice, and 1 from Uncle Warren, and I opened them and burned them. I received a letter a few days ago from Cousin May Wright. Her folks were all well. I don't think that there is any use of you sending your picture to me, as we shall probably be home before the cars have a chance to bring it, and men that are 6 feet tall in the army are mighty scarce now. We received orders yesterday to make our muster-out rolls immediately, as the order had come to muster out immediately the 7th Wisconsin. I have been at work all day helping to make out the rolls. The colonel wants to get to the state by the 4th if possible, but I don't think we will get home before the 20th of July, as we will probably have to stay some time before we will get our pay and muster out papers. I hardly know where to tell you to direct. Tell Ed, if he hasn't sent that money, to wait until he hears from me again. Give my love to all the folks. Tell me where Aim and Cash are, and also what they are about. Yours in haste, Albert C. Morse. Write soon. P.S. There is but very little going on here now. We are all out of money, and I tell you it might dull. I hope I shall get home soon. I haven't heard from Amos for a long time, and I know not where to direct to him. I'm glad that Ed is getting along so well, and I hope that he will make any amount of money from his cows this summer. It's been raining hard all day, but looks like pleasant weather now for tomorrow. I've had ripe apples this year, all I wanted to eat once. Strawberries were gone long ago, and blackberries beginning to get ripe. Well, I should be glad to write more, but I am too busy just now. ACM. These pages are undated, apparently to Brother Ed from ACM. Roadside completely tired out and unable to move any further, and not even at the point of the bayonet, and some of those boys belong to this regiment, whose courage has never been doubted. Ed, you should remember that McClellan, and this next line is unreadable. I guess you are mistaken about his moving only 4 miles a day, for I have it from good authority that they march near 20 some days, and never less than 8. I tell you, it is harder work than you've ever done to take your knapsack and 3 days' rations, with 60 rounds of cartridges, and march through the dust shoe deep, and likely without enough water from sun up until it is down, supposing that you don't go more than 10 miles a day, such as McClellan's army had to do. I don't know, as Mac did right at Antietam in not following up the Rebs. In the first place, what he had to follow them with. According to official records, our army, all told, that was about 90,000 and Lee's 85,000. Now, if you ever saw any fight, you know that once it gets whipped up, there won't be a fight as free as the next time, while on the other side of the question, the one that whipped the first will do better next. Such was our army at Antietam. They had met with several reverses, and it rather disheartened them, and I think that Mac did well to do what he did with the Army of the Potomac. After the Battle of Antietam was fought, our army was too tired to follow the Rebs, or at least the soldiers felt so, and I expect that they know much about it as some of these folks that make so much fun about it. For my part, I don't think that they could have been followed to advantage, as they could choose their own position every time, and had about as many men as we did. But enough about this. From your brother, Albert C. Morse. This short letter with enclosed note to Ed is undated. Dear Mother, it has been a long time since I wrote to you, but a great while longer since you have written to me. The reason I haven't wrote to you before is that I do not know what to write about. I got some mittens from you quite a while ago and was very glad of them. I suppose you think it strange that I have not sent home any money. Well, you can think as bad of me as you're a mind to. You won't be apt to think anything too bad for me. If you can call me, I won't say what. Goodbye. A.C. Morse. And there is an enclosed note that reads, Tell Ed I want he should get a bill of the goods, and also receipt from Brown, and send me. I don't know, but I believe I owe him that much. I shan't send John any more money until I let Uncle Wilson have $100. Direct Battery H, 1st Wisconsin Heavy Artillery, Washington, D.C. I shall write to Ed Sunday. The boys say it is the 15th instead of the 12th. No more. ACM. Letter from Cousin Philo B. Wright to John W. Brackett, Washington Street Hospital, Alexandria, Virginia, September 22nd, 1862. John W. Brackett. Dear Cousin, your letters of the 14th and 17th of August came to hand today, and I hastened to reply. The last I knew of Albert, He was in Seminary Hospital, which is about 2 miles from here. That was last spring. He was then well, not tough, and was employed in cooking for the hospital. I then advised him to remain in that position, believing it would be better for him. If it is a possible thing, I shall find out his whereabouts. The war, I need not comment on. If McClellan is given the power and means, I believe all will come out right. I've no idea when. Personal and political aims and jealousies cannot be calculated on. Hence, all is uncertainty. With a single purpose and one competent head, it would be a short job. I can tell you but little about our regiment. Probably you are the best posted. The last time I was in the ranks was August 28th. Towards the close of that day, we met the enemy fair. Face to face at 150 yards we stood, probably 30 minutes. Then the rebels showed us their backs. It was then dark, and that was the end of the battle. Our company went in with 60 men. I have learned since that of that number, 44 were killed and wounded. Old Grant was not disgraced there, referring to Grant County, Wisconsin. Since then, the boys have done noble fighting in Virginia and Maryland. How fared it with them, I do not know. I am anxious to hear from them, yet almost dread. I want to be with them, but cannot hope for many days. I'm glad that George and Amos enlisted. Glad to hear that anyone has, who has not stronger claims elsewhere. Such I would not have enlist, but the thousands of foreigners who are willing to enjoy the benefits of our government and feel no interest in sustaining it. And those Americans who are sentimentally sympathetic with the South, and those able-bodied and strong who, unless they have certain positions, refuse to join and fight with us. Them I would rejoice to see forced to the front of our battle line and held there at the point of the bayonet. Curse the cowards! I have seen the time when I would not say that, but thought such are not worth a man's thought, for they are not men. But I have changed. Lie upon the battlefield bleeding, see your faithful line grow thinner and thinner, and your best friends weltering in their own blood. See them, unharmed cowards, straggle to the rear, and a few firm, brave ones in front, outnumbered and overpowered, beaten and forced back, all for the want of help that might and should be had. Then lie on the field a prisoner, and think not of home, but tax your soul to conjure a curse on cowards. Certainly, John, this rebellion will never